Hello there, I'm Nicholas, and this is On Listening with Chi Rising Studio. Thank you for joining me today. Throughout our lives, we all go through different kinds of transitions. Those pivotal moments when one phase of life ends and another begins. Life is a series of transitions, some chosen and others thrust upon us. Whether it's changing careers, moving to a new home, ending or beginning relationships, or the profound transitions of birth, aging, and ultimately death. These passages shape who we are and who we become. Transitions have a way of revealing our deepest patterns. When our familiar routines and certainties are disrupted, we often discover aspects of ourselves we hadn't fully recognized before. Some of us resist change fiercely, holding tight to what we know. Others might rush headlong into whatever comes next without fully processing what's ending. Some of us become paralyzed, unable to move forward or fully inhabit the present moment. And all of these responses are perfectly normal. What I've come to understand is that our ability to navigate transitions with grace and wisdom has a profound impact on our overall well-being. The quality of attention we bring to these threshold moments can transform them from periods of disorientation and loss into opportunities for profound growth and self-understanding. This is where the practice of intentional listening becomes especially valuable. By intentional listening, I mean something deeper than simply hearing words or sounds. I'm talking about developing a receptive awareness to what's emerging both within us and around us during times of change. This kind of listening involves tuning in to our physical sensations, our emotional landscape, our intuitive knowing, and the subtle signals from our environment. It's about cultivating a quality of presence that allows us to receive information without immediately judging or acting upon it. When we're facing a significant transition, our instinct is often to immediately do something to solve, fix, or even escape the discomfort of uncertainty. But what if the most powerful first step isn't action at all, but a deeper quality of listening? What might we discover if we create space to hear what this transition is trying to teach us? Consider how nature handles transitions. The changing of seasons doesn't happen all at once, but through a gradual unfolding. A tree doesn't resist the dropping of its leaves in autumn, or force new growth in winter. There's a wisdom in this natural rhythm, a recognition that each phase serves its purpose and contains its own unique gifts. When we rush through transitions or resist them entirely, we miss the essential wisdom they contain. One of the most challenging aspects of transitions is that they often involve a period of disorientation, what anthropologists call liminality. This is the threshold between what was and what will be, where old identities and certainties have fallen away, but new ones haven't yet solidified. In modern society, we tend to pathologize this in-between state, seeing it as something to be minimized or avoided. Yet throughout human history, cultures have recognized liminal periods as sacred times of potential and transformation. The question becomes, how do we listen effectively during these liminal periods? How do we attune ourselves to what wants to emerge when everything feels uncertain? Part of the answer lies in slowing down our tendency to immediately seek resolution. There's a subtle but important difference between being stuck and intentionally dwelling in the questions a transition raises. When we rush to answers, we often end up recreating familiar patterns rather than allowing genuinely new possibilities to emerge. This reminds me of the ancient wisdom about emptiness that appears across many philosophical traditions. It's in the spaces between notes that music happens. It's the empty center of a vessel that makes it useful, as Lao Tzu observed. Similarly, transitions create an emptiness, a space where old structures have dissolved, but new ones haven't yet formed. Our discomfort with this emptiness often drives us to fill it prematurely. Yet when we can listen to and honor this empty space, it becomes fertile ground for authentic growth. Many people struggle with transitions because they believe they should already know how to navigate them. There's an expectation that adults should somehow be experts at change. But the truth is that each significant transition brings its own unique challenges and opportunities for learning. The skills that helped you navigate one life change might not serve you in another. This is why cultivating an attitude of curiosity and beginner's mind can be so powerful during these periods. Intentional listening during transitions also involves tuning into our bodies. Our physical experience often contains wisdom that our thinking minds miss. When facing change, notice, where do you feel tension? What sensations arise when you contemplate the transition you're experiencing? Is your breathing shallow or deep? Are you holding yourself in a protective posture? These bodily signals aren't random. They're valuable information about what you need to move through this change with greater ease. One particularly valuable practice is to listen to the stories we tell ourselves about the transition we're experiencing. Our narratives have tremendous power to shape our experience. Is this change happening to you or for you? Do you frame it as an ending or as a beginning? Is it a crisis or an opportunity? Notice these aren't just semantic differences, they fundamentally change how we experience and navigate transitions. This narrative awareness connects to what psychologists call meaning-making, our natural human tendency to create coherent stories that help us make sense of our experiences. During transitions, our meaning-making capacities are both challenged and activated. Old stories break down, creating space for new understandings to emerge. By listening to our evolving narratives with compassion and curiosity, we can actively participate in constructing more empowering interpretations of change. It's worth noting that transitions don't just affect us individually. They ripple through our relationships and communities. Major life changes often reorganize our social connections, bringing some relationships to greater prominence, whilst others naturally fade away. This social dimension of transition requires its own kind of listening, attunement to shifting relational dynamics, and emerging needs for support, boundaries, and connection. When we're in the midst of significant change, we often need to revisit our core values and priorities. What mattered most in your previous chapter might shift in importance as you enter a new phase. listening inwardly to what truly matters now, not what should matter or what mattered before, helps ensure that the choices you make align with your authentic self. This values alignment is crucial for navigating transitions in ways that leads to genuine fulfillment rather than just maintaining the status quo. Resistance is another fascinating aspect of transitions that merits deep listening. When we notice ourselves resisting change, the typical response is to either push through the resistance or surrender to it entirely. But what if resistance itself contains important information? Perhaps it's signaling that we're moving too quickly, or that certain needs aren't being addressed, or that we haven't fully honored what's ending before embracing what's beginning. By listening to our resistance with curiosity rather than judgment, we discover its intelligence. Grief is an inevitable companion to meaningful transitions, even positive ones. Any significant change involves loss of familiar routines, identities, relationships, even possibilities. Our cultures often encourage us to move quickly past grief, focusing immediately on the positive aspects of change. But unacknowledged grief doesn't disappear. It simply goes underground, emerging later in unexpected ways. Learning to listen to and honor our grief is essential for healthy transitions. At the same time, transitions contain seeds of profound joy and discovery. There's an aliveness that comes with new beginnings, with stepping into uncharted territory. When we listen for the possibilities that excite us, that resonate with our deepest values and aspirations, we access the creative energy needed to build what comes next. This listening for joy isn't about toxic positivity or denying difficulty. It's about staying attuned to the full spectrum of what a transition can offer. One of the most powerful questions we can ask during transitions is, what wants to emerge now? This question shifts us from a stance of control to one of co-creation. Rather than forcing a predetermined outcome, we listen for the natural direction of growth emerging from this particular juncture in our lives. Now, this doesn't mean passively accepting whatever happens, but rather attuning ourselves to the unique possibilities present in this moment that align with our deeper purpose. Transitions also invite us to reconsider our relationship with uncertainty. Most of us have been conditioned to see uncertainty as a problem to be solved rather than a natural and necessary part of growth. Yet, all creativity, all innovation, all meaningful change requires moving through uncertainty. By listening to our discomfort with the unknown, we can gradually build a new relationship with uncertainty, one based on curiosity rather than fear. The pace of transitions varies widely, and this too requires attentive listening. Some changes unfold gradually over many years, whilst others happen in sudden, disruptive moments. Each has its own rhythm and timeline that rarely conforms to our preferences or expectations. Learning to listen to and honor the natural timing of a particular transition, rather than rushing it or delaying it artificially, allows us to work with its energy rather than against it. It can be helpful to develop specific practices for listening during transitions. These might include journaling to track emerging insights, meditation to quiet the reactive mind, time in nature to connect with larger rhythms, or conversations with trusted friends who can reflect back what they hear in your experience. The specific practice matters less than the consistent intention to create space for deeper listening. There's also tremendous value in listening to the wisdom of others who have navigated similar transitions. Not to copy their path, but to expand your sense of what's possible. Hearing diverse stories of how others have moved through major changes can help us recognize patterns, possibilities, and pitfalls we might otherwise miss. This kind of listening broadens our perspective beyond our immediate experience. That said, transitions ultimately call for listening to your own inner authority. External guidance, whilst valuable, can't replace the knowing that emerges from your lived experience. Learning to differentiate between external shoulds and your authentic inner guidance is essential for navigating transitions in ways that truly serve your growth and well-being. For those navigating particularly challenging transitions, it's worth remembering that the capacity for deep listening can be compromised by stress, trauma, or overwhelm. In these cases, the first step might be creating conditions that restore basic safety and stability. Sometimes we need to listen first to our need for support before we can listen more deeply to the transition itself. I'd like to offer a simple but potentially powerful practice for cultivating intentional listening during transitions. Set aside just 5 minutes each day to sit quietly and ask yourself, what's asking for my attention right now? Then listen, without agenda, not to solve or fix anything, but simply to hear what's present, what's there. Notice physical sensations, emotions, thoughts, and intuitive knowing. Over time, this practice builds your capacity to hear the subtle signals that guide wise navigation through change. What makes transitions so fascinating is that they're simultaneously universal and deeply unique and personal. Every human experiences major life transitions, yet each of us navigates them in our own way, shaped by our temperament, history, culture, and circumstances. This paradox of common humanity and individual uniqueness calls for a listening practice that honors both, recognizing the shared patterns whilst respecting your particular journey. Ultimately, how we navigate transitions shapes not just our immediate circumstances, but the overall arc of our lives. Each threshold crossed with awareness becomes a chance to align more deeply with who we truly are and what matters most. By cultivating intentional listening during these pivotal moments, we transform periods of disruption into opportunities for authentic growth and meaningful contribution. Thank you for joining me today. I invite you to carry the practice of deep listening into the changes unfolding in your life, trusting that wisdom emerges when we create space to truly hear what's present. If you found value in this episode, please consider sharing it with a friend who might also find it interesting. Your support helps us continue to create this space for learning and growth. You can find out more about our studio and the podcast at chirising.studio.